So let's get started. Meeting the client where they are. I think fundamentally in the rapport building process, this is the number one thing that we need to think about, right? I remember presenting in front of several hundred realtors at 95th Avenue, and I asked everybody, raise your hand if you have telekinesis. And they're like, well, what are you talking about? I'm like, yeah, all you guys have telekinesis. Everybody's a mind reader. And they go, how do you figure? I go, well, whether you're talking to an online lead on a phone, you meet a buyer at an open house, you show up to someone's house selling a house, you know exactly what they want to talk about because you just go up and you start presenting, right? We all have that habit. We're going to give them the presentation. We're going to rehearse the presentation. And we go in and we meet people and we just start talking, right? And it's really something that baffles me because unless you meet the client where they are, how effective is your conversation going to be? So I want everyone to step back and realize a couple different things. Number one, when anyone is making a decision to move, they've arrived at a specific place in their life and they're looking to go somewhere else. So wouldn't we all agree that the number one thing to do is meet them where they are, right? Simple. And for everyone asking about writing down notes and stuff, we will have notes for all of our sessions. So just please be present as to what we're talking about, and everything that we talk about, every process we have will be sent to you right after the session. So meet the client where they are. We want to effectively meet them where they are so we can understand what's important to them, right? This is the number one thing that agents miss on, right? We all just start talking. But how effective it is to understand the two most important factors to somebody: motivations and expectations. Now, no matter where you go in any decision you make in your life, the best way to understand this is to put yourself in the shoes of a consumer. People tend to forget that when we stepped off and we take our, our realtor Superman capes off, that we're people too, that we go to restaurants, we go to car dealerships, we work with products, we work with services. And now think about the tale of two cities, right? Think about when you show up somewhere and that person just connects with you, finds out what's important to you, understand why you're there, what you're expecting, and has that conversation with you, right? Versus not even understanding that. So the two things that you need to understand to build effective rapport with every single person is what their motivations are and what their expectations are of you as an agent. So keeping this interactive, who here has actually used those words to another client specifically? And none of the people that we are in our coaching group can actually answer yes to this. Who's ever asked somebody, what are your expectations of an agent you partner with? Anybody? Five or six people out of 350. 7. Going once, going 8. So think about this, right? How effective can you have a conversation? How can you close? How can you sell? How can you present to somebody the experience they want, meet them where they're at if you don't know their motivations and expectations, right? This is one of the most important things that you'll ever learn, and you will literally watch it change the entire experience that the client has when you ask them these questions. So the rapport building mindset, right? When you're going into these conversations, knowing a client's motivations and expectations is building the key rapport, right? This is what you have to understand. If you don't know these two things, let's think about this. I'm going to share an open house example. When people are going to open houses, the common questions people ask is, how long have you been looking? What are you looking for? Do you think this is a commoditized conversation? I'll save you the short answer of thinking it's yes. You're having the same conversation as everyone else has. In the world of I want to stand out, how do I be different? How do I be the go-to agent? How do I be top of mind? It's letting people be heard. It's creating the experience they want, meeting them where they're at. So if you're the only agent that meets someone at meets someone at an open house and says to them, hey, I see you're looking around. Are you just looking around online on your own, or are you at the place that you've actually started considering working with somebody? Oh, that's great. What are you most excited about in moving? And they share that with you. And what are your expectations of an agent you partner with? That is a conversation that you'll have that nobody else will have. You'll also have enough information out of doing this that you can actually now have a conversation that's meaningful to you too as an agent. Now, which conversation are you having, right? Wonder if they're going to try to sell us. Who's ever been a consumer and gone somewhere, like a car lot or somewhere else, where somebody's tried to sell them, right? Nobody likes to be sold, but I don't know one person that doesn't like spending money, right? If I gave you guys all a bunch of money and said, let's go to Fifth Avenue and go on a shopping spree in New York City, you'd be like, yes. But if I asked you to walk down Canal Street, you'd be oozing at the skin because there's everyone's trying to sell you, right? Just put yourself in the mindset of the consumer. And typically the agents are, hey, here's what you should know. If you're buying a house, this is the home buying process. But they might have bought a house before, right? What are their motivations? What are their expectations, right? So you have to understand this. Now, I always say this. Have you ever gone somewhere where somebody's actually genuinely engaged you, understood your motivations, your expectations, answered all your questions, and there's that moment they're like, do you have any other questions on it? And you kind of sit there like, no. And you're like, I'll take it, right? It's because there's a subconscious thought of concerns and things that are in your mind that if they're met, then a buying decision can happen. Now, the best example is going to a restaurant. We've all gone out to eat. And this really will nail the which conversation are we having part. There's waiters and waitresses that will go to your table. And there's one type of waiter or waitress that'll say, hey, here are all the specials. And they will rattle off those specials. God forbid you have a question. You cannot stop them. They won't answer them. They said, when the specials are done, we can answer any questions. And they have no well-being. Their agenda is they know that they have to give the specials, so they give the specials. Then there's the other waiter or waitress that shows up and says, hey, Amit, hey, David, hey, Andrew. You know what? Like, we're really happy that you're here. What are you in the mood for? Do you like chicken? Do you like fish? You're a vegetarian? We have different specials. What are you in the mood for tonight? And they say, you know what? I really like chicken. And if we're talking to Andrew, like, we have a great chicken parm, you know? And like, that's his favorite thing. You see him smile, right? And then they give the specials in the context of the conversation that the customer wants to have. And that right there changes your whole experience. Because when you show up to dining and you're at a table, you're really excited. And then when that person just shows up, boom, wants to impose their will, it changes the whole rapport of the situation, right? Focus on the conversation the client wants to have. Remember, they had motivation, something that brought them there, an expectation that they want to have met. And if you could understand that and have the conversation they want, again, you're in rapport and you're in the process of actually gaining a client or making a sale. So here are the 4 steps to having effective conversations. Number 1, it's asking the right questions, right? If you understand what to ask somebody, it's going to prompt a series of dialogues. Then you're going to use your active listening skills, right? Then you're going to repeat back what is important to them. And then you're going to use the 80-20 rule. You're going to ask questions and listen 80% of the time and only talk 20% of the time. So if I was dialoguing this out, right, I would reach out and I would say, hey, Amit, you want to unmute yourself? I think you just logged back in. Amit?
Yep. I'm sorry. I got disconnected a second.
No problem. We're going to do a quick role play to show people how to have an effective conversation, right? We'll use the open house example, right? And you'd walk into an open house and I would say, and you'll be the buyer and I'll be the agent. I'd say, hey, Amit, thank you for taking the time to come here today. So what are you most excited about at looking at this house and potentially others?
You know, my wife and I, we've been thinking about buying a place for a while, and we're just excited to be at a property rather than seeing it online.
Oh, so it sounds like what's important to you is really getting out in the field. And where are you guys in the process? Just starting to look in the field, or you're at the point of potentially partnering with an agent?
We're not sure yet. We just wanted to get an idea of homes out there. We don't want to waste anyone's time.
I totally understand. You really want to know what's out there. So in a perfect world, right, if it's 60, 94 months from now, what does the ideal house look like to you? And that would make you really excited that you woke up every day and felt like you stepped into a dream.
You know, we live in this neighborhood and we love it. And the thing is, our house needs some updates and we don't want to spend the money to update everything. So something very similar to what we have, but just updated. And if we can find it within the next few months, we'd jump on it.
So what I hear you saying, Amit, is ideally you want a home that doesn't require you to live through renovations. Is there anything else that's important to you in the process?
Just like pretty much everyone, we want to make sure that it's a fair price that we pay for the property.
Okay, that you want to get a good value. What else? Is there something that's important to your wife that you might not have shared in what's important to you?
Yeah, we have a little bit different taste. So I like modern. She doesn't really like modern. So it would have to be somewhere in between, where, we're both happy. And she doesn't want to, the last few deals that we've done before we got married, she had some disappointments with her agents, meaning the communication was very poor. It seemed like in the beginning they were all excited, and then it seemed like they had other clients that they were more excited about than her.
So just so I want to make sure we're on the same page, what's important to you is finding a home that doesn't require renovations, the perfect match between modern and not modern, so both your wife and you are happy, and an actual communication plan with an agent that they had the same excitement the first day like when we met today that continued throughout the process. Is there anything else that would be important to you in partnering with an agent and ideally finding that home that you want?
I mean, not at all. Most agents don't do more than one of those things. So yeah, if you could do all of those, we'd be really happy.
Great. Well, thank you. So, as you guys could see, we asked them questions, we utilized active listening. The whole part of repeating back what's important to them, what I hear important to you is, what I hear you saying is, people want to be heard, right? That is what gives them that feeling, right? Rapport is just as much about creating a feeling as it is what to say. There's that comfort level, right? So instead of going into the mirroring, matching, and trying to be a waha ninja, right? Like just be a human being, right? Like really connect with people in a way that you want people to connect with you. Now let's really dive into the process, right? I call this the Med-C process. And when COVID started, I kind of looked at what was going on and I looked at the group of people we were working with and I coined this the communication economy. I fundamentally knew that because of what was going on in the world, the way that people would make decisions were changing. Thus, the conversations we had as agents needed to change. So we started thinking through what are different ways to really think through what's going on today and really be different. And this all goes back to giving the client the best experience, right? Because that's all really what we want. But if you can't share your value and they can't see your value, then there's a disconnect that has been going on for decades in real estate. It should be so clear what you're doing. It's like you put $5 in a jukebox, you know what songs you're getting back, right? You ask these people the right questions, you use active listening, you repeat back what's important to them. You don't talk all the time. You ultimately will make them feel comfortable. Now, what I'm going to share with you is this is a process that I've created since COVID started. It's called the Med-C process. This will work anywhere you go, whether you're hiring an employee, whether you're interviewing a seller, whether you're interviewing a buyer. It helps with any conversation that you could have, and I'll share it with you in these contexts, right? Number one, M stands for motivation, right? What are you motivated by most, or what's made you most excited to consider making a move, right? If you're someone in an online lead, you could understand what that is. If you're a buyer, what has changed in your life specifically that made you want to do this, right? And if you're a seller, why are you moving, right? What is it all about? And the reason you ask motivation first is it subconsciously anchors them to whatever the positive result is that they want out of the transaction. That's why it's important really to go into that first. Expectations. Now, this is something that I find to be one of like those little secret tricks. It's as Tony Robbins would say, it's the difference that makes a difference. It's that 1 millimeter rule. That one little thing that changes everything, right? So how can you fulfill another human being's expectations if you don't know what they are? I always joke around that says, every person that's married once a month should share with their spouse what their expectations are so they're continued to be fulfilled, because people's expectations change. You don't know what they are. It's a very effective technique, but sometimes it can, joking around, blow up in your face, because if you're a married man and you don't know the expectations of your spouse, you could be in big trouble. But working with buyers and sellers and leads, what are your expectations of the agent you partner with? Be quiet. Let them talk. You notice how Amit said communication, track record, What have you done in my neighborhood? How will you market my property differently? I want to get the best price, right? People's expectations in selling a home are based around three things, right? Marketing, price, communication, and the newest one is the client experience that they have, right? So if they're buying a house, what are their expectations of an agent, right? You'll hear people say things like, well, you know what? I'm tired of looking at properties online. I find them all myself. I've been sending them to agents and they just literally bring me there. That goes back to what we're saying before of the communication economy and sharing your value proposition. So if you really listen to what somebody's expectations are, you know how to fulfill them. The third one, disappointments. You know, Andrew, have you had any disappointments either previously working with an agent or in hiring any services that you want to make sure you avoid in this process? Again, be quiet, let them talk. They'll tell you all their fears here, right? Everything that they don't want to happen that would frustrate them would be a trigger. How many times have you worked with a client and realized something like 4 months, 2 months into the process that you realize that this is really disappointing and you're like, I wish they just told me that before. Well, the simplest way to do this is ask, right? And the fourth one, look, there's a lot going on in the world today and you have to frame this in this context. You could say between COVID, an election year, and mixed messaging about the economy, do you have any specific concerns in making a move in this environment? Look, we've all taken buyers out in this, and I've heard this in hundreds of conversations. And at the end, it's like they give you you qualify them. You know, they want more space, their lease is expiring, all those triggers that you think will make a move. And then all of a sudden the concerns come up. Well, I want to make sure I get the lowest interest rate. I want to make sure that this really is the bottom of a market, right? I want to make sure I'm getting the right deal. And these are all things you need to work through before. Now, what I find the most amazing thing about this process is if you do this before you talk about yourself, your marketing plan, what you can do for somebody, this is a conversation that is 100% client focused. By the way, this is something that for the 300 plus people here, if you're either not in coaching with us or have never sat in on something that we've done, you won't know this process. So you guys, the 300 plus people, have a different process than everybody else. This works in creating that feeling of rapport. This is it in a nutshell. If you know why somebody's doing something, what their expectations are, the disappointments that they've had in the past, right? Because people's past experiences affect their present choices, and what concerns they have given what's going on in the world, how can you not be able to communicate the value that the other person wants? This 100% eliminates that whole guessing game of, well, I don't know, do they care about marketing more? Do they care about price? Are they going to care about collections? Are they going to care about insights? Do they have a time frame that they need? This will share all this stuff with you. Now, for people that are team leaders on here, right? How does this rapport building thing work with a team member or hiring a potential employee? Well, if you're a team leader and you're looking to add somebody, you should write your motivations for adding a team member and what your expectations of that team member are. Then when you're meeting somebody, you ask them what are their motivations for joining your team and what are their expectations of you as a team leader for mentorship and their expectations as a team of what they've provided. You could go through the same process of your disappointments with team members or your concerns with growing your team, right? This works with employees too. Between ourselves and our coaching clients, we've hired 16 people, 10 admins in the last 3 months. And we've gone through all this. And the one thing that we get from everyone is this: not a single person has ever asked me why I'm joining this, what my expectations of the employer are, what disappointments I've had in the past, which really is culture, and what concerns I have about maybe working somewhere. This works 100% of the time, you know? So make sure that you do this actively with your clients and that it's something that becomes part of your routine conversations. Now, you want to be able to find a role play partner to practice this with, right? This will be, at the end, we'll play the matchmaker part and we'll start connecting people together and we'll teach you how to do this. Practicing your skills and improving on them is a learned skill. It's something you get better at doing over time. But the one thing I know about being an agent for 13 years and coaching thousands of people around this country is that the questions your clients ask you are never going to change. The process is never going to change. The objections are never going to change. The only thing that changes is the preparation that we have and the skills that we use. So let's kind of go through this in a high-level overview. Building rapport is meeting somebody where they're at. And that's really understanding their motivations and expectations that brought them where they are and what they're looking to get out of making a buying decision or a selling decision. Number two, have the conversation they want to have. By understanding somebody's motivations and expectations, you could talk about the things that are important to them. And by following the Med-C process, you will always understand what to do, how to do it, and to create the best client experience possible, right? So